which you did not have back in the day when we marched. But you have the technology that can show to millions and millions more people, reach millions more people. They can see the same thing and they can say blatantly, you know, how is somebody interpreting this in a different manner? That's not what we had in our day. It was just everything was hidden then to a large extent, and now it's wide open, and we can blatantly see the negativity. We can blatantly see those in authority who purport to be protective of everybody being unjust to a certain portion of us. The other thing is that the diversity of people that are involved now as opposed to our day. So I think it is touching the hearts and the thoughts of a lot more people than we think. And even if it's somebody you don't see on TV, or even if it's someone you don't see marching, they've got to be processing this and thinking about it and wondering about it. And so I think that there's going to be significant change, if it's not already started, probably. People of color are not just African American. People of color are Asian, or Indians, or American Indians, you know, Latinos. There are other people of color, and then there are Asians. There are other subgroups that see the injustice, and the question is, if it happens to these people, it could happen to me easily. So I think it just puts in people's faces. I think it's forcing them to to look inside themselves. We're talking about what's going on. In your face kind of thing.
Yeah, here, what I did notice, it seemed to be, there are a lot of forums and things like that were going on in school with people talking about it, and even the president put something out, a letter to the entire student body in regards to walking past Union Square and seeing everything that was going on, and people even marching all over the city, because they marched by my dorm one night as well. Everything here seems to be extremely peaceful, but it also seems as if you can feel where the police are also peaceful and not aggressive, to the point where I think when you said it made them look more so inside of themselves, and an openness, I guess you would say, to everything that's going on, instead of just being so immediately defensive. I myself had, I wouldn't call it a run-in, but a situation where we were being profiled at school. I know a lot of the security officers, but in most of the buildings that I go in routinely, and I see them all the time, and so we speak and joke and things like that. But some of the other buildings I don't know, so I was being profiled, and I just sat back after I was profiled and just came back to the area and just watched and observed everything as everyone else came in and out of the building. And then I went and asked the security officer about it. He was saying that I fit the subscription the description of someone who had just recently done some incident earlier that morning. And then so I had a conversation with him, and then I had a conversation with the public safety, and I nicely explained several things to them about how I dress, and if I dress certain ways, I'm not routinely treated like everyone else. And then he was was like, well, sir, I was just pointing certain things. I just said, sir, you have a hat on, so it's kind of easy that you could have gotten confused with the person. And I said, I just said, sir, everyone has hats on outside. It's 30 degrees outside. That's how far ahead. And then I was telling him, just explaining, he was extremely apologetic, but I was just pointing these things out to him. And I was saying, I can't dress how all my other peers are dressed. We're paying the same amount of tuition to go here, because whenever I dress that way, I'm seen totally different from how they're being seen. I said, I have to wear a messenger bag and wear this and wear that just to make everyone else feel comfortable. And I was like, today I didn't feel like doing that. I said, to be honest with you, I just left the library at 4 o'clock this morning and then got up there at 6 for an 8 o'clock class. I said, like all the other students, I didn't feel like doing that this morning. I just wanted to stay warm. And then so I do know the next day they had a talk, but it was just trying to point certain things out to them, etc. And the funny part about it is, typically I wouldn't have known this would have kept on going. After not having sleep in for a few nights because of all the papers and finals and things like that, it just got me on the wrong day.
Or on the right day.
Because
the kinds of things that you said were introspective kinds of things that made somebody go back and think, because people don't get to understand each other unless they have a relationship with each other. And they can't relate to each other unless they know something about each other. And so that they got more than, they know you a little bit more. And in knowing you, it may spark them to know somebody else that they may try to profile. It may make them want to think, what's going on, instead of just automatically profiling.
Yeah.
You have, Sheldon, on campus, do you have any student security interaction or collaboration?
With what are you speaking of? Collaboration with what?
Well, I mean, we always remember the past the way we want to, but I remember back in the 70s where things were burning and all that, and the reaction was to, first of all, I think security in general, everybody sort of pulled away from each other, and in those days when things were as inflamed or more, there was a serious effort made to have even community representatives work with the police, things like that. I just wondered if they did something like that on campus, so that people don't have to be apologizing, but doing the thing they don't want to be doing. Just prevent it in the first place, which means, like Barb says, you got to know each other, but to know each other, you got to be in contact. And if people go back in their little castles and then just come streaming out when there's something going on, both sides, you're not going to know much about each other until it's in a more extreme circumstance.
Well, the school itself has been doing a lot, and the security officers at the school are they're privately owned, I guess contracted with the school. But the school has been doing a lot as far as putting forums out there, having speeches from both activists from the community as well as those I guess from academia who are supposed to be authorities on the issues and things like that. They have had things in regards from the ALCU talking about stop and frisk when it was big last year and things like that. So the school has been very receptive. In regards to the profiling that I dealt with, it's not something that was actually, I guess, it wasn't caused in relation to what has recently transpired, because the same thing has happened in the past when they would get me confused with someone or people. They have a book that they have at all the posts for people who have done things like maybe some type of lewd act or maybe threatening a professor or faculty or something like that on campus. So they're just not allowed into the buildings. And so, even with what I said, I wasn't actually trying to get anyone in trouble because they were asking me, "Would you like to make a complaint?" It's like, no, I don't want to make a complaint. Do you know the name of the officer? I know I don't know the name of the officer. I didn't care to know the name of the officer. That was not why I even went to the public safety office. The school's public safety office. My whole point, I told them to go to the public. My whole point in going to the public safety office was to bring up the issue because it has happened clearly in the past. And look, you need to perhaps tell your officers to be a little bit more careful or thoughtful when trying to assess whether or not someone belongs on campus or not. We pay the same tuition bill as everyone else, and we're not necessarily getting treated equally. And after a time, it starts to wear on you. You get kind of tired of it. You lose patience with it. So that was my whole purpose, and I kind of chuckled, was very playful with him when I was explaining the different absurdities in regards to how he was saying, sir, you do have a hat on. Like, sir, it's 30 degrees outside, it's cold, and everyone has a hat on their head trying to keep their head warm. Are you suggesting that I not wear a hat so people can see my identity and still breathe? What can I possibly, I was asking rhetorical questions, but in a nice way of because just trying to get him to understand. Is there anything that I possibly could do to become less like a suspect so often? Is there anything I could do? No.
What color was,
just wondering.
What race was he?
The police officer at the time was Hispanic, and the captain who I spoke with, he was Asian. And another thing when Miss Barbara was talking about the different races and dark skin, that is definitely the situation here. I don't know in regards to percentages, but I know as far as I see, most people who are dark here are not definitely not African American. There are many, many, many different races. I've even encountered most of most of the black people who I deal with or I come in contact with on a daily basis. They have roots in the Caribbean, whether they're first or second generation. We have people from many other places, so I'm always mistaken for being Dominican. So.
I guess you just have one of those faces, Sheldon.
No, I just if you go on YouTube and look up Trevor Noah from South Africa, he has a joke about that. He tried very hard to be a black American. He came to America, got off the plane, and some guy said, "Hey, he said, I did all that homework and I turned out to be Dominican."
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, I tried to
Did he?
behave him for my birthday.
Well, I think part of what I was thinking about too is that the power is not in the physical marching, and we need to remember that. Even if millions of people do it, the power is not in the physical marching. We need to always look behind that, because one of Sheldon's New York officials said something to the effect that, oh, well, they're just marching now, but just like all these things, they peter out in a little while and you won't have anybody.
May I say something?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, first of all.
Good morning.
The Dominicans don't speak Chinese, but anyway.
You heard that?
The marches this time, they're different. The marches are different. They don't even feel the same. The essence of them are 100% diametric to what they were then. And I can remember back as early as when I was like 12, 13 years old in a march. All of them felt the same, but these are different. And the major difference in these is that they are not religious. They are not religious, and neither are they secular. Secular marches are violent because secular seeks to settle things in the same manner that it was perpetrated against it. Religious marches are waiting for the God that they don't know to change things and end up with the God who changes things, the one who perpetuated, which is the government. These marches are different in that the innocence is the children, they're kids. Most of these people who are involved in the marches are children who are searching for a truth that they have never experienced before. And that in itself gives it the openness that's necessary for it to be infused with a spiritual essence, religious essence. And keep in mind also that the churches are eerily quiet. None of them are speaking out at all. Your mega churches, your T.D. Jakes, your Cross for Dollar, all these people who have all these mega churches are silent. Why? They are silent because they are impotent. Somewhere inside of them, they know that they are impotent because the government owns them. So now it is our opportunity to seize the moment by virtue of infusing a spiritual seed in the whole thing and impregnating it with truth.
Can you explain what you mean by the government owns them? You talking about tax returns?
Oh, yeah. What I mean by the government owns them is that none of them can actually stand in audit. None of them, there is something called included in the Hatch Act is a law that says, not the Hatch Act, I'm sorry, it's government, included in 501c3 says that you cannot endorse a political candidate. They have endorsed candidates in the past.
I see.
And they do not want that scrutiny to come back to them because they endorse the money. And they cannot do that from the pulpit. So they don't want. There are other things that for example, there are, if you 501c3, you cannot have a profitable business, or like for example, selling tapes for profit, selling CDs for profit. You can't do that. Now, T.D. Jakes was smart. He separated his, but most of them did not. Did that help you, Denise?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't mean own them in the sense that they own them because, purchased. Also, there's something else I want to put out there. African American people who feel like they have made it have a greater disconnect from the community than the policemen who should be.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen it time and time again. I mean, look at the African Americans who think they have made it, who fall in line, who fall in lockstep with those who are saying, cut the food stamp program, cut the safety net. They are the same ones who stand up with those people and say, well, they ought to get off their butts and work until it hits them.
You're not talking about Charles Barkley, are you? He said some truly horrible things. I said, you aren't talking about Charles Barkley, are you? Because he said some truly horrible things.
Well, I'm not just talking about you. I'm talking about people who make $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Ben
Like
Carson.
they're lazy. I'm talking about people who are on the, not in corporate America, but on the fringes of it. Think they in it. That's what I'm talking about. Now, I'm talking about the Dr. Carsons from Johns Hopkins. Those idiots. And he wouldn't even have an education if it had not been for affirmative action. Wait a moment.
Yeah, I have noticed what you were talking about as you started to speak, that there is definitely, I guess, a peaceful feel as well with the marches, or I guess the spirit. So isn't an outcry and not a liking how things have been done, but like even when I was at my internship today and they came marching by, it is mostly students of many backgrounds, and actually also socioeconomic backgrounds as well. But it is more so like an innocence to them as well. And so it is an outcry, like, you know, this is definitely wrong, but it wasn't. It was no type of a situation where we're about to inflict violence upon you or get retribution or anything like that. So like, you definitely tell that it was dealing with the hearts, and I guess showing it in this manner. It's very difficult for even the perpetrators of certain things to be violent back when someone's not being violent with you and not really displaying that much of a threat towards you.
Well, most people march for African Americans. The majority, most of the white people didn't march with us. They marched against the war in Vietnam. They didn't march civil rights. Yes, some, but you tell them most of them were getting marching against the war in Vietnam. Yeah, today is different. They're not marching against the war in Iraq or Afghanistan. They are coming together, regardless of race and socioeconomic, and on the basis of the injustice. That's different. It's totally different. What for taking stand. So now you're going to put your kids in jail. You're going to put your kids in the street. They were attacked. There was a huge outcry. There wasn't a huge outcry because there were black people attacked. There was a huge outcry because there were people being attacked, there were reporters being attacked. That's where the outcry came from. That's the difference. And I don't think that the society has even recognized the difference.
That's
I
right.
don't think that society even understands there is a difference. But worse than that, I don't even think there are enough of them who cares whether there's a difference or not to try to understand. So it is incumbent upon us who see things from a spiritual perspective to actually make the best of what we do so that we can make the changes. Question? Hello?
Yep,
No questions.
we're here.
I mean, does that make sense?
Yes.
Have we talked about the significance of the number 11 and how many times he said, "I can't breathe"?
11 is the gateway. But I'm going to tell you something that we haven't talked about. I don't think anyway. You know what's significant? That I think we missed? South Carolina did not hesitate to arrest the guy.
They did not what?
Hesitate to make the arrest when that Howard Patrol shot the guy.
Oh.
How do you tell them? Oh,
Did
the
you
one
like
gas
that?
station fella.
I did find that interesting that
I didn't know about
that
one.
guy was arrested
Yeah, the
immediately.
police officer that shot the guy, he was going back in his car to get his license, and he lost it and shot him. He didn't die.
But, and that's not the only case. This white sheriff off duty shot Utah, South Carolina, and the grand jury died at him.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what's happening here. South Carolina, the epicenter for the secessionist movement, one of the worst states in the union when it came to dealing with people of color. And now, this state is the one that indicted the sheriff and also arrested the highway patrolman immediately. Do you think that goes without having some type of significance based upon the people who are seeking truth, who are in this state?
Interesting how that's nowhere in the news, except here. And you wonder where else in the country. Nobody's doing a comparing and contrasting kind of thing. All you have is the president making as necessarily, I guess, an appropriate, a kind of general statement that some communities are better than others. Some have dealt with it, but who's got a sense of what communities and in what way? So, yeah, I felt that way for some time about South Carolina, and yet at the same time, it still holds on to some of its insanities, but then I guess that's what makes us charming. So you have a governor who's gonna, let's go after Obama because he's violating the Constitution. Come on, go drink some tea.
And see, I'm
Sweet tea.
seeing it even further than that,
Punjabi.
the contrast politics. There's a contrast between a system of laws and stuff, racism is codified. I'm simply different than that. I'm speaking from a perspective, the reason it's not, I haven't seen it, even if it's in other places, is because I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's primarily insignificant. The significance of it in South Carolina is the way the Creator is saying, you make a difference. Your presence make a difference. These things did not begin to erupt until we began to deal with racism. And there may be those who feel like this is coincidental, but that means that you don't believe that there is a creator to believe it's coincidence. There are no coincidences. This erupted when we began to deal with racism. It erupted when the whole idea of domestic violence against females erupted when we began to deal with respecting the feminine, the female. And we talked about in depth how South Carolina was the epicenter for all these other things. And now all of a sudden we began to see a shift. And if this is the epicenter, then the shift also begins in the epicenter. And I see it much deeper than a news report. I see it as a spiritual report to those who recognize the essence of their being and who seeks righteousness over political justice, not just for people of color, but for everyone. Because without justice for everyone, there is no justice, period.
sitting here mulling over what Janice just brought up about the statement, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And, you know,
I think, when you're not speaking to the the whole of the world can't breathe.
well, if you look at it,
But
that breath is spirit,
yeah,
and authority, and the authorities, you can't breathe, well, you're not gonna breathe, whatever breath you have, I'm gonna take that. It's an effort to derail or to snuff out or to kill or to destroy something that's already occurring, life, spiritual life, not religious life, but spiritual life. And by this person being sacrificed in a sense, it's provoked something at a much deeper level in folk who are seeking some spiritual filling of the void that's there. The questioning and the this is not right kind of thing.
choking justice, choking righteousness.
I was watching something, one of those TV shows, you know, like Entertainment Tonight or something like that. And they were talking about stuff like that, and then they were sort of cutting to commercial, and then the black woman said, you know the black man got to die. I went, she actually said that? Because it seems like that happens all the time. And I'm like, but then I thought, okay, so, because we are the Christ image in this society. We are. And that sacrifice comes along with it. So it's a hard thing to think about, but we are indeed the Christ image.
And it is clearly the most scary, threatening thing
Yeah.
for so many different people.
So yeah, the black man
That
got to
makes
die.
all. That's true. The black man got to die even in the movie. But that does not have a subliminal effect.
And it's a shame. We have to die, but we do. We have to die to save them from themselves.
Well, how does change come without sacrifice?
Right.
Frederick Douglass says that to seek freedom without sacrifice is like water in the rain without the storm. That's not going to happen. People who are in power don't change out of the goodness of their hearts. There has to be something that sparks the consciousness of a nation to make people change. And the conscience of this nation is definitely not the people in power. The consciousness of this nation are the kids, the ones who are on the streets every day and every night. And I'm not talking about the idiots who are looking and burning. That's not what I'm talking about. Think about it this way also. There was a huge attempt to delegitimize the whole movement towards justice with this Mike Brown thing.
Yes.
And I do not believe one moment that the prosecutor in Ferguson sat down with the chief of police and said, we're going to release this at night so that we can create havoc and this thing would peter out and it would lose its legitimacy. I believe that this came from a higher place than that. I don't believe that they just concocted this alone. I do believe, I have never seen small town authorities concoct anything of that magnitude which has the opportunity to have such an overshadowing effect without influence and from outside sources coming together either on the phone or huddled in some room someplace, figuring out how we can make this thing lose its legitimacy. I do not believe that it just was concocted in Ferguson. The governor's mansion, probably, but not Ferguson. Which means that it doesn't matter whether they're Democrat or Republican. They are just the same. So it's not about the politics, it's about the spirits.
I have a question. This is Raina. One of the guys I know put on his Facebook post about Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old who was shot, who had the gun, the toy gun. And he said, and this is a black guy, but he said, how can his parents not be considered negligent for him having that gun? And, that was one of those cases for me where I didn't think that was his parents being negligent at all. And there's a lot about that case too. They say, oh, he was pulling the gun out of his pocket, out of his trousers, or out of his belt. And the other people said, well, the police were telling him to drop the weapon, and some were saying to raise your hands. And it was only about 1.2 seconds from when they gave him a command to when he was shot. And I look at that, and I still look at there is an aspect of we have to be responsible for what we do, what we teach, even as parents. But there's also an aspect of our kids, being kids. My brothers had BB guns, and they didn't look, they didn't necessarily look like toy guns, and that was just part of the experience of being a kid,
We're supposed to be so proud of our gun-toting culture.
But that was an airsoft gun.
And it was
And that was an open
carry state. Exactly.
I disagree with the guy because if that's the case, then why would the dude in Walmart be shot when they sold the gun in Walmart?
They were shopping.
Why was he shot? Why is it that our kids have to live to a different standard? If that had been a white kid, did you think he would have been shot? No. That kid was shot simply because he's a black kid with a gun. And this country sees no value in African American life, especially if you are male. Yeah. None whatsoever. No value.
And I guess that's the thing that resonates with me. The I matter kind of issue that I'm hearing. That it matters, my life matters just like someone else's life matters. But then when I think about it from the spiritual perspective, that's what everybody's missing. That yes, indeed, every life matters. Whether it's my color or whether it's the same color as I or the same gender or the same, every life matters. And I think that's the basic thing that resonates with people, which is a part of this, of what's going on now. That maybe they can or cannot put into words, as I can or cannot put into words, but that there is something basic to the truth that I matter just as much as you matter. Which then speaks to the point that we're all one, that everybody doesn't want to even get to that point.
And Barbara, the thing is, I see that as, yeah, and I heard this guy say, well, why didn't you just say that Black lives matter? White lives matter too. Well, nobody's taking white or black. So, no one else is being treated like their lives don't matter other than black and brown people. So it's not saying that my life matter as being black life more than yours. It's saying that my life matters just as much as yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, you almost might want to say Black Lives Matters too. You know.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're saying. Yeah.
Can I want to say,
That's it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is a thought that kind of crossed my mind. Maybe it's, we talked about fear. In my mind, I'm looking at it this way. We are in such fear of Black life being it's the image of Christ. Maybe it's the fear that we don't really want to know who we are. If we are, even though we're in the same circular, we see each other as opposite ends. Maybe we don't want to see who we really are and what we really are capable of, because once we become aware, then we have to acknowledge what we haven't done. So maybe it isn't so much that Black life doesn't matter, it matters so much that I don't want to know that I'm capable of doing more than what I'm doing. Because I want to hold on to what I have as I perceive it to be.
So I mentioned about that before, and that is actually absolutely right. As far as on a subconscious level, another thing that actually takes place is why blacks have always been feared, and how blacks have always been, well, there has been an effort to always dominate and control blacks. It's not actually the black lives that are even trying to be controlled as individuals. It's also has to do a lot with what's internal and associations as well. So we were talking about different concepts last week, and usually, typically, what falls under black, which is black is extremely broad. It's more so indigenous people from all over the world, and this is even included in if you go into like places like Scotland and things like that, because they too have had indigenous people in different tribes and things like that. But it's this idea of being extremely close to nature and being closer to, if you want to say, Elohim or beginning. All of it's the same. And there's a fear of that. There's a fear of that creativity that is involved with that and things like that. So usually indigenous people and black people are usually associated with night, but at the same time being associated with night and black magic and things like that, and that what is mysterious and not necessarily understood intellectually. It also deals with, I forgot the part I was about to say. It deals with creativity. It deals with things like jazz and music and things like that. So, and with it being in night, what's not clearly seen from the intellect. And so, what you would want to do and is try to imperialism. You want to try to control those things and have them to the point where they're not more powerful than you. So this is something that is actually internal to man that just manifests itself in a physical way.
You know, one thing I heard, and they read a few of the, what are they, tweets, I guess, or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's apparently, it'd be kind of interesting to think of it as a movement per se, but some momentum for white people to recount their experiences with the police. And there were a couple.
Criming while white.
What was
I
it?
think it's, the hashtag I think is criming while white or something like
Cramming?
that. Criming, like
Criming,
committing crimes
right,
while,
that's it,
while
criming
being
while
a
white.
white person.
Yeah, there were a couple of really interesting ones about one guy was dead drunk and punched a policeman in the face, and the guy took him home.
Yeah.
Just-
Gave him a,
just-
gave him a
just
ride
change-
home.
Yeah, and another young lady was saying she stole a car with another guy. The guy went to jail, she went home. He was black. So those kind of stories coming out, I think it fits with this notion of trying to speak truth, if you want, and then just put it out there. But one of the things that I also heard was one of the mothers of one of the kids in Ferguson is to the point where she was saying a risk factor, my words, a risk factor for getting into the criminal justice system is owning a car. Because in Ferguson and some other small towns, the police have been dogging a lot of young black men who drive cars to give them tickets. They can't pay the tickets, so then they've got to go to jail, and the next thing you know, they lost their job, blah, blah, blah. It's just a whole move them off the street thing. And even if it's not that cynical, it's just that, all of that's the synergy that's part of, which I found, of course, disturbing, but sort of amazing. It's not something you think of. So she didn't want any of her sons to have cars.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been going on a long time though.
I never heard of it before. I mean, but I'm aware certainly of how, but I mean, it's all this stuff it really is a Rubik's Cube of stuff, because you have police budgets cut, so you have small town revenues that aren't there, so that all this sort of, I guess, it's just bringing to the surface people's ways of trying to get money and other things like that, and what that seems to expose. I don't know, it's amazing.
Racism.
But sort of like, don't drive through a small town, you know? I mean, we all knew that on the way to Florida anyway. Make sure you slow down and go 3 miles below the speed limit when you hit certain towns, but, you know.
The race hasn't been prepared.
No. Richard, I heard what you're talking about about Ferguson, but I really don't think it has as much to do with police budget cuts as they say it did, because when you think about them talking about police budget cuts, if they had such budget cuts, how did they get armored vehicles? And
well, to be honest, I don't know what kind of, first of all, those vehicles are stripped down from the military, etc. What kind of arrangements they had to own them. For all I know, they've got 20 years to pay for them. They're subsidized.
No, sir.
Who knows? You know?
no, sir, the way that works is that the government has a surplus of armored vehicles because of the purchases that they made. I see 2 bluebirds and 1 redbird. But anyway, they gave them to the police department. They gave them the military-style weapons. They gave them the Kevlar vest. And the thing that got me about it is that they gave all of these things to police departments, but at the same time, they went into Iraq. Those guys had to buy their own vest. So the militarization of the police department started in the late 60s, and they did it quietly. And that was a collusion between the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense, along with the National Sheriff and the National Police Chief organizations in this country. If you look at the history of it, you will see that there was a decision made that there would never be another movement like it was in the 60s. And when they began to militarize the police department. And it started, and what happened, the isolation of the African American communities came long before that. If you look at the roadmap from the 60s, you will see that the highways, the interstate highways are called the scent highways. And every interstate highway goes through the black community in major cities around this country. So this is no conspiracy theory. This is reality. So there has always been an effort to contain the African American community because they've always known at some point there's going to be a boiling point, and there's going to have to deal with it. So they prepared themselves to deal with it. It's just that simple. And as far as Ferguson is concerned, and the people who vote there, those kids, those guys, not just kids, but dogs as well, were charged with felonies. So when they got those felony charges, they could vote. So, you talk about the number of people in that area who can make a difference by virtue of voting, and I'm saying you probably are enough to do it, but you're also diminishing the power by virtue of what you're doing by militarization of communities, and by, in conjunction with that, also charging them with felonies and isolating the community and moving all the jobs out of the community. Those are the kinds of things. None of these things are isolated. That's my point. None of them are isolated. All of them are working in conjunction with each other. And I want to also say this while I'm saying it. That is one of the reasons I am quickly losing in respect for Barack Hussein Obama.
Yeah.
I have more respect for Eric Holder than I do for him.
He doesn't have a reason
He
now
knows-
to
he
be
knows what's
careful.
going on.
He doesn't have a reason to be careful. I don't understand what he thinks could possibly happen. He has 2 years left in office.
Two words. The reason being careful. 2 words. Hillary Clinton.
I don't understand.
That's right. And you're going to sacrifice a nation of kids for a woman who probably is not going to win anyway, and who doesn't give a rat's butt about the people who are being sacrificed. When most of the problem with the people who are being sacrificed came from her husband, and you know this. And for those who are listening, this is not doom and gloom. You can't change if you don't know reality, what's going on.
That's true.
It simply means that we got our work cut out for us, that's all.
One of the things that struck me as Uncle Richard was talking about, though, we brought up the priming white folks and the girl who was taken home, or the guy who punched the police was taken home for his safety. And it bothers me about the Tamir Rice thing as well. That bystander that called the police back in the day would not have called the police. They would have known who that kid's parents were. They would have known that kid. They would have called that kid's parents. They would have, been able to talk to that child. And it's the idea that what community means to us is so different. To those white cops with those white, offenders, they were still part of their community. They still felt like they needed to protect their community. And among blacks and between blacks and whites, sometimes, and sometimes among blacks, there's been a loss of a sense of community. Like what my sons could do in South Carolina because of my family there, because of who knows my family there, is very different than what they could do out here in California. Because there is no family, there is no community. I don't even really know my neighbors. And that bothers me too, in terms of this fragmentation of who of us being, like, you know, a community wherever we are, you know, or being part of a community.
When my kids were in school, there was an altercation at a basketball game that involved one of their cousins. And when someone, they got hit or something, I don't know what happened, they were at the hospital, and the policeman sent my kids home when they found out who they were. I went back to find out what happened because I didn't think it was right. Now, when I was in college, they had 2 black policemen in union, and they had one job. Their only assignment was, when I came to union, to watch me. And I did not know this until after I had moved back. One of the policemen is still living. And he said to me that when they found out that you were in town, all we had to do was follow me. And they were instructed to arrest me, and if I resisted, to shoot me. And guess what? There's no doubt in my mind whether or not they would have done it. So, there's no difference between an African-American policeman with a gun and a white policeman. African-American policemen with guns have to prove that they're being quote-unquote fair, when in essence, they are perpetuating the same system that killed their own kids.
Isn't this like the overseer kind of mentality, though?
Yeah.
And it talked about, I remember reading about that, how even blacks who beat other blacks during slavery sometimes were worse about it than the white overseers, for the same reason.
It's the same reason. Foreman Cruz said, when it comes to policemen and militia, it does not matter what race it is. If he has the mentality of a policeman, he's going to be worse than the one who made him a policeman. So what did we do? We talked about the issues. We talked about the outcome of the problems and the outcome. We talked about the incident that's taking place for virtually every other week for the last, 6 months. So what do we do? What is the answer? And I know that Richard is anxious to tell us what the answer is.
Oh, sorry, what?
I mean, what do we do?
Not me again. Okay. Just leave me alone.
Well, I've always been very perplexed with this because, particularly when I was in high school, teaching in high school, black boys would tell me that all the time. They would get stopped. If they were more than one of them in a car, they would get stopped all the time at night. That they were at the point that they would try not to go on certain ways because they know they would get stopped. This has been going on forever. And even when I look at my job, there's a double standard there for me as a black woman as opposed to my coworker who's a white woman. She can do, for example, and I have to say this because it still annoys me, she can curse in front of kids all the time. And I mean, hell, S-H-I-T, it doesn't matter. The kids pay her no attention whatsoever. But now if I was to do that, they would have me sitting in the principal's office immediately. But the standard still is there, and our kids doesn't recognize that standard is there. And even oftentimes adults that are dealing with, knowing that this is going on, does not do anything to address it. Because they're afraid of where they are within their own comfort zone. Okay, there's a comfort zone that you have where you know you're in a minority working in a situation where there is a majority that controls everything. So yeah, what do we do? Do you tell the kids that there's a double standard there and you need to be aware of that? There are two sets of rules.
You get in trouble for that too.
I know that. But that is the truth.
I don't know. You asked me what I would say. I felt, since I had some sense of it, and I don't pretend to be thorough, well thought through or out or whatever, but I mean, I walk around cynically saying, I'm the problem. I'm a white middle class, well, I'm not quite Anglo-Saxon, but you know, I'm the WASP guy. It never made sense to me why it has to fall on the oppressed to what do you call it? Free the oppressor. You know, I mean, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
You gotta sacrifice till my people. You know how many times I've had guys look at me and talk to me like I'm one of them? Boy, you know? I mean, they think they can say anything to me and I'm just gonna stand there and go, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
You know, and I just move away because I still have a trigger in me that goes places I can't control. But, you know, I resent that. And then I get it in the 70s, I got it from both sides. You know?
Yeah.
So you're just like, okay, screw it, I'm going overseas.
But
That's
I
part of
wonder
it.
what has to happen is what is happening. Because someone had another article on Facebook. They talked about homosexuals who were hypocrites. Because there was something called Stone Ridge or Stone something, big riots in the, you know, that started what is now become the Pride movement. And these folks, for days, looted and terrorized and rioted. And no one brings that up, that it took that level of action
Well, Obama
for
mentioned
the
that.
awareness to go, okay, we got to do something here. I mean, I'm feeling like it needs to be revolution, but I don't know what revolution is. I certainly don't want it to be bullets, but a revolution of thought.
The issue is it can't be bullets. Bullets mean light. You know, it doesn't mean anything to die physically. It's got to be a spiritual fix. And so the first thing I think we need to do is be grateful. And as hard as that seems to sound, and as harsh as it seems to sound, that's the one thing that we got to remember that we're all about. Being grateful for the opportunities to transform stuff. And these are those things. The fix is not a physical fix, it's a spiritual fix. And so by seeing beyond the physical and saying, this is what people are doing, but it's not them. The young people are seeking a spiritual infilling rather than just marching just for the sake of marching. Those are the kinds of things that we have to put out there in the macro and continue to put in the macro. So we got to see beyond the physical. If we look at the physical stuff right now and only with physical eyes right now, we would say we have not moved an inch. Instead of moving an inch, we've fallen back 500 feet. But that's not so because of the things we already talked about. This is different. It's not the same. Many more people have access to this now. They see it and they're questioning their own innards as a result of that. So I think that there is no physical fix. We just have to stay on target with the spiritual. And Sheldon had his hand up to rescue me.
No, not at all. But yes, as Ms. Barber was saying, that it's not physical, it's not getting caught up in what you see as far as the physical things that are actually taking place. And even Richard even touched on it a little bit. As far as, okay, if you have someone who is, for lack of better words, talking amongst us, if you have someone who is struggling in a certain area, let's say you've been some type of mentor or something like that. Let's say if you were dealing with an individual who came from, just making up a scenario to make a point, that came from a background and that particular person is not very trusting and things like that. How do you win that person over and you make that person become comfortable? You don't do it by making them physically do it because now you're controlling them. It's the same as you would invite anyone to your family. You start to make that person feel more comfortable, and you create space. And with you creating space for that particular person, you give them room and a chance to grow and create this space. But the person is going to have to decide to do that particular thing on their own, because you cannot physically force them to do it. But what you can do is you can make it a conducive environment for them to grow, for them to become more loving and expand, and that sense of oneness and things like that by your very self offering that door up for them to actually to walk through. So when Richard was talking about he never thought of the oppressed coming to save the oppressor, that's exactly what it actually is. It's as if the oppressed is the servant, but at the same time it's the leader. So when I say it's the servant, the oppressed is the servant leader. The oppressed is the one that's in charge. The oppressed is the one that is leading that person to greater growth and knowing who they are and to stop running from themselves. The whole thing that about this I must control is I must control the Elohim in me. That's all that this is. This is that playing out in the physical.
Yeah,
Joe,
I am. Go ahead, Pastor.
I think that's exactly what Audrey was talking about when she was talking about the Christ or the Messiah that we are.
Okay, I can jump in because this is Audrey.
You won't speak for
but-
a woman over 50.
But I hear you, Rania, because
Say that.
my thoughts in the last few days, my thoughts before I came to this Christ image thought, my thoughts before that were, I'm ready to go riot too, because with all the stuff happening, all the racist stuff in the media, and then thinking about the fact that this new Congress is going to come in, they're going to impeach Obama, whatever, I was ready to get in the street and riot too. But then when I let my thinking go further than that, in terms of spiritual stuff, that's when I came to the realization of the Christ image that we are. But yeah, I'm with you, girl. Revolution, let's go.
Well, and that's why I say it's still going to be revolution. It just may not be one with bullets, because
Right.
we won't win that. But
Well,
there would have to be a change in thought.
I mean, I think you're saying, to me, what I hear is there are moments when,
Ignite.
I mean,
Ignite.
I can feel emotional about it because I can think of moments when you just need to be present. You need to stand up, and I guess you can use the expression to be counted. You don't have to have anything in your hands. You don't have to be yelling. You don't even have to have a sign. Just stand up. And
It's got to be a
will.
spiritual revolution.
So come out of your houses. That's what it is. You know what I mean? To me.
What Rania is expressing and Audrey described as for children, it's something that is extremely necessary in order for the oppressed to see that they're the ones who must lead this thing to a place of resolution. That's hopelessness. Revolution grows out of hopelessness.
Yeah.
No one wants to die on the front line fighting for right.
That's powerful.
It's only when it gets to a place of hopelessness, where there seems to be no other way to change things other than to do it in a physical manner. And the person who does it that way, is the very one who does not allow their thoughts to go with argument further than just being in the street doing something violently, but understanding the method that understanding first of all what's going on, and the method of change being that from a spiritual perspective. I do believe that there was a immature understanding of quote unquote God gonna change things during the earlier movements, right? I think it was, but I think that the immature understanding was because the God that was being looked to change things was the God that was introduced during slavery.
Yes.
However, the God that's going to change things now we begin to see is the God that's in the mirror. And the mirror not being the physical one, but the spiritual mirror that we see. So the answer to the hopelessness is those who are seeking truth. Hope is not the answer to hopelessness. The answer to hopelessness is those who are seeking truth. Because hope doesn't do anything. Hope waits.
Yeah, just eat you up.
Yeah.
Well, but I think, I mean, what's going through my mind is, I mean, a couple of times in my experience, when I found myself getting really angry, I went out, I don't even want to say I really participated, but I just went out and got in the middle of it. And trust me, 99% of us can feel angry as hell, but you go and march, you won't be angry. But the fact that you're there, you know, is something. And that's what I kind of mean by revolution. We try to define revolution as really violent, physical, you know, don't define it. You're moving, you're trying to move make a change and move in a direction. So if you go with something holding that in yourself, you don't know the outcome.
Well, they didn't care about marching. The whole idea of marching was, you know, let them do it. They decided.
Well,
They didn't get upset with King until he started dealing with the Vietnam War. They didn't care about him marching for rights because they knew they could put in the thing on paper and didn't have to enforce it. The same thing they did with after slavery.
yeah.
All this stuff was on paper, but you know, black folk had the right to vote after slavery. That was on paper, but they didn't get a chance to vote. So they didn't give a rat about the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was nothing but a band-aid or world covering racism that allowed it to flourish under the covers. When he became international in his scope, that's when he got killed. That's when they became concerned. And I'm saying that's not enough. We have to become otherworldly in our approach. And when you become otherworldly in your approach, you never have to be in a march. You don't have to do that. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Do what you do from where you are. We can speak to spiritual things on the other side of the world. We can deal with them on the other side of the world just as easily as we can with each other. But Denise called me yesterday and says to me, "You've been on mine for the last couple of days." And I told her what had transpired with me on 29th. And the other part of that was, that goes to show how spiritually connected we are. Why was she concerned about me for the last couple of days to the extent that it bothered her? Because something was going on that she felt. And I'm saying, just as easy as she could feel it between Santuck and Columbia, that can also be experienced on the other side of the world. So we have to come together as one in terms of our expressed desires, not so much as how we want it, of what we want the outcome to be, but we want a resolution to whatever the it is. And I think that we will not only see that, but we will experience it, and no one will ever know what happened. And it doesn't matter as long as it happens. So it's not so much of the physical thing at all. I think the day for the physical is gone for us, but it's necessary for those who have to vent their anger, vent their frustration, vent their hopelessness.
Well, I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying, and yeah, because I don't go and do it anymore. I've been in a few experiences, and that didn't, so I wanted to do it that level, I guess, but, so it's almost like a hierarchy of, if I paraphrase Maslow with that sort of hierarchy of needs, you work through those levels of, what, reaction and dealing with it, until you realize, yeah, it is more, it's less physical, it's less an act, it's ultimately, what, an attitude, it's an awareness. But there's still that sense, though, that, I mean, I'll say in me, just exposing my incompleteness, there's still that sense that, I mean, one of the things I think that's different is it just seems like we don't have the occasion on simpler, lower levels to dialogue, to just be together, that sort of thing. So it's sort of like people are more separate and apart. And so when something does happen, the reason they get together is going to be at a more extreme kind of point. So how do you build that sense of synergy outward from what might be an inward growth? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we can sit here and say that somewhat about ourselves, but you still have a sense, don't you, that you want the group to be bigger in a way. And I'm not saying we want to go recruit or anything, I don't mean that. You want to connect with other, what do I want to say at the risk of not saying it correctly, like-minded. Well, yeah, I don't want to say like-spirited, but where are they? Who are they? What are they? You know?
What I'm saying is that we're already connected. And light always overshadows darkness. And the one thing that could have not destroyed, but impeded or slowed it down or caused it to lose focus would have been if Audrey had pursued the course that she felt, as opposed to looking deeper and seeing that there's a price effect in this thing. And the reason I say that about Audrey is because she is every one of us and we are her. And the whole idea behind the facilitators coming together is recognition that we have been brought together for a purpose. And that purpose is to understand that we are already connected. We are already having an international, worldwide, interstellar, stellar, universal dialogue, however you want to put it. Whatever we come to an agreement or understanding on has an effect on every single thing in this world, because we were told to dominate. The word dominate means kingdom, means that we were told to establish the kingdom in this earth consciousness that we are familiar with from the other world. And that does not necessarily include sitting down with like-minded people as much as it includes sitting down with those who have already been gathered from by a greater being than us. I cannot say that I gather teachers, but I am saying that facilitators were gathered from the other world. And I see that more clearly when I look at when just as Sheldon came, one was leaving. That kind of thing helps me to see that from the other world, things are being set into motion, and it is up to us to make the decision to go through hell or high waters in order to do what we know that we have been destined to do. Regardless of the consequences, we must do it. And when I tell you that if I had not listened to that inner voice and had driven that Mercury instead of having driven the enclave, I would have been unconscious or dead today from the impact that that car took. There is no way that that Mercury would have stood that impact. That did not happen simply coincidentally or accidentally. But it was a twofold thing. The boy, Mama said, she feel like I saved his life by virtue of him hitting me. And that's a whole new story. But my point is, I am not the only one who has gone through things this week, maybe not the same thing, but chaotic circumstances that makes you question whether or not you're on the right course. And I hope that I'm not rambling.
No.
I've been agitated all week, and it's something underneath the surface. It's just that everything I can do to keep calm.
Well, I mean, to me,
Breathe.
you don't have, that's a very interesting,
There you go.
it's a very interesting slogan that's being used now, and to me, it's much more, there's much more potential in it than hands up, don't shoot. You know, it's breathe, let me breathe, I mean, that kind of thing, that's got,
Yeah.
but I think for me, it's because there's something in me, if I were translating what you said into me, and I feel it, because I don't have that assuredness that this is going to go anywhere. You know, you think, okay, the grand jury, and then you say, okay, it's going to take them a year, blah, 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 and you go, oh, crap, you know? So it's like, what's changing or what isn't? I don't know what the new tools are.
There
I can
aren't
go
any.
back and say it's all those things that have been done in the past have learned how to be put into boxes and characterized, profiled, etc. So you can't use the old. That's why the notion of revolution and sort of what's his name? Anyway, not Guevara, but it never changes. I mean, it never stops. It's always changing because until you have that fullness of understanding or oneness, there's always. It's almost scientific. There's always new combinations that create new, you know what I'm saying, new molecules or whatever. So it's that kind of thing. So I think if anything, at the moment it's like what to do, what works, what will push this thing in a good direction as opposed to just a sense that it's just going to start going in circles or something.
But, you know, putting it in perspective, you know, we started talking about the I can't breathe kind of issue, and Janice pointed that out. Deborah, you just pointed out underlying agitation. Therein lies what we must do. We must do what it is we've learned to do. We have to breathe. We have to keep ourselves centered, especially if we are advocating for mankind. And if we allow the uneasiness underneath us to get out of control, how is that different from what everybody's experiencing anyway? But if our desire is that mankind gets it beyond me and you as separate individuals, but you are me and I am you, you got to get that basic principle. Then what you said about, and you said it when you first came in, Vermel, is intent the why of our desire? What's our intent and what's our desire? Our desire is that we know that we are all one. And getting distracted, don't allow our emotions of dis-ease or uneasiness distract us from the fact that we can stay on target regardless of what's going on out there. Remember, what's physical is the illusion. What is the truth of the matter? The truth of the matter is that we are one, and that's the way that we stay focused and stay on target, while everybody else is doing whatever it is they need to do to feel balanced. That's what we need to do, and we need to do it because we know to do that. If we did not know to do that, but we've learned that, we've resonated with that. And so that's what we got to do. Now, that might not be what the next person has to do, but we know that that's what we got to do. And it is changing, regardless of whether we think it is or not.
Yeah.
It has been a tremendous shift. It really has. And so, it may even look worse before we can see beyond the physical. The physical may look a lot worse, but we can't let that deter us. And so,
I've been struggling with just feeling like, how can the world be moving on day to day? How can people say hello and greet me? And this, you know, how can everyone behave as if everything is normal? You know, and I want to just cry. I don't want to talk to people at work because I'm heartbroken. And I'm trying to understand how it is that we live in such separate worlds, that, you know, the people who want to defend the police and the tough job that they're doing can't see what communities of color are feeling, and there's this huge gap between experiences and understanding. And I've been struggling with, how do we put that together? What am I supposed to do with this pain? You know, and I get frustrated if I looked on the news sites and I didn't see enough coverage, because I'm like, well, I guess they're already trying to wipe it off the front pages and we won't hear anything about it anymore, regardless of how many people are in the streets across the nation, because I know that's something that can happen. But then hearing what you're saying, Barbara, about being one, and it helps me realize that I feel like I have some sense of direction about what I'm feeling and what's supposed to happen next. And if we are one, then I am also the scared cop that shoots people. You know, I am the person who can't recognize that it's a human being in front of me instead of a scary monster.
Well, you know, I have to say real quick, Janice, you're saying that helps me too, because I didn't realize, it helps me realize the oneness, because I've been feeling the same way and struggling with it almost alone. You know,
Yeah.
that same thing, no one talks about it, no one, you know, and I live in a culture that's pretty, that's not at all black, and it's like, it doesn't exist here, you know?
And you're in one of the most progressive areas of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, but nobody at work, I went to church, a church meeting, nobody mentioned it. It's just this idea of, you know.
It's like it does, it just boggles
But
the
that
mind.
idea that what we feel is the same because we're one, but we're also those other people too. We're also the people on the other side. I agree that that helps.
Suppose that when we get beyond the myth of religion and the illusion of political solutions, and embrace the reality of who we are and our purpose for being, suppose that is the greater thing that Jesus was talking about. Suppose the greater thing is that. Simply moving beyond the myth of religion and seeing politics for the illusion as it is, and materialism as a distraction. And once we get beyond those things, the greater thing is to bring the whole of humanity to a place of unicity, even if we have to do it with them screaming all the way. Because that's it. Maybe we are on the crux of this greater thing. Because I cannot believe for the life of me that this country was haphazardly thrown together with the mixture of people from around the globe, and with the attitude being the attitude towards the darker skinned people being worse than the attitude is towards the brown skinned people, and the attitude toward the brown skin is worse than it is against the Asian people. And then it goes on down the line until it gets to the poor white people, then the middle class white, and the wealthy. I mean, there seems to be a relation there. Suppose we are to collapse that whole thing, and we are on the crux of just doing that. And I'm sorry, the avenue that we travel to bring that to fruition is the one that we're on right now. This whole idea of putting it in the macro.
And not just money and race, but gender too. Because Bill Cosby has had a very bad couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't deny it. I don't deny it at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially gender on the same carriage with race.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think I see that as the greater thing. Because if you look at it, the same problems existed. Gender issues and race issues when Jesus walked the earth.
Yeah.
Those Samaritans.
Yeah.
Well, the image that keeps popping in my mind, if I were to attach to a physical image, is the image of the little kid that was part of a march, and the police officer that was there as well, and the kid just said, in essence, "I don't want to fight. Can I have a hug?" and the image that was captured was this authoritarian policeman and this young black child hugging. So if you look beyond that, the issue is you don't want authority erasing the youth. You want the oneness. So. And for that position, for that policeman, I have to believe that changed him, whether he acknowledges it or not.
Yeah.
For that child, that changed that child, whether they acknowledge it or not, at some level.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's always been the idea, that the innocence of.
But the media doesn't pick up on that kind of thing.
You
It just,
wouldn't accept a hug in the same way from an adult, right? I mean, that's all the way back to, in a distorted way, the whole evangelical thing about abortion versus capital punishment. I mean, it's innocent, unborn versus somebody who's had a life to get it right, got it wrong, so now you have to be punished for it. And that's in the subconscious side, you know? So you just don't know what kind of extrapolation comes from that. Because if I misuse Pastor Richard's notion of kingdom, that policeman, just like the centurion, is trained, was attracted to, revels in to a certain extent. Like my father in the military. He chose between going to seminary or West Point, and he went to West Point. Now I all my life understood how close those two paths are without being able to articulate it fully. But same thing with policemen. But there's something for all the genuine, whatever you want to call it, in hugging the kid, he could turn around 2 seconds later, right?
that's true, but that's not the point. That's not the point.
Well, don't throw all the children out the street, please. Get them out there hugging everybody they can find.
No, that wasn't the point I was making.
I had someone to pose a question to me that I still didn't answer. And they said, why is it that blacks will not let their kids get abortions, have their kids get abortions? That a young black woman will more likely have to keep the child, which is truly the case, statistically, as opposed to a young white girl would have an abortion. Their parents would have them have an abortion. This is just something I'm just throwing out that happened to me. Not necessarily if you just give an answer, but just to out there.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that in terms of the white church spending so much time on abortion. Are lots of white girls having abortions?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Statistics are there, clearly.
Wow.
Clearly. 3-4 to 1.
That's somewhat cultural, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is cultural.
Well, and even all these statistics, if you could, they get much more stratified than that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the whole thing of color is there because there are other things behind it, social economic. You telling me that a black middle class girl's still gonna have the baby versus a white middle class, you know, who knows? But I would venture, but that's just from what I've been told, right? So you walk away with this foolish generalization that if you don't have much, at least that's something that you can really bond with, right? So that's an explanation. How valid it is, I don't know. I don't interact with people in those circumstances. And that's a media, you know, understood thing, but I'm not sure I know what the point is of that question.
Well, the person was very genuine. They just really wanted to know an answer. It wasn't even something that was fluff. She was genuinely interested. Why? Well, why is it? Why don't they? You know, I have a niece right now that's she's getting to graduate from college next weekend with 2 children that have never been married. And it almost appears it's socially acceptable, or it is socially acceptable, to have children and not be married.
Well, I mean, it's in my family. Should have been in my house at Thanksgiving. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But why is it not acceptable? That's somebody's notion. And I grew up that way. Yes, you have to be married because it's a protection, a legal protection for the children. That kind of thing. Well, but there are other cultures around the world where people aren't married until their kids are already 40 years old and they just finally have the money to do it. So they, you know, there's all kinds of things, but there's a community that supports that. So what's the...
Social acceptability is another method of division, period. I mean...
And control.
We can do the notion of social acceptability with pregnancy. We can deal with social acceptability with jobs. We can deal with social acceptability with education. We can look at it economically. There are more people in Appalachia who get food stamps than there are in New York in terms of percentages. So all the things that we talk about in terms of social acceptability, political acceptability, economic acceptability, all of these things are physical, material distraction that keep us from what is acceptable. And if we look closely at religion, religion is the most divisive thing on the face of the earth. And an outgrowth of economic, social, political comes from religion. Religion pushes social acceptability, or religion pushes political acceptability. Religion pushes economic acceptability, and all of that religion, and the religion that does that is the same religion that saw slavery as being economic normal. So all of that, when we start looking at these factors, they have to be actually thrown out of the window. And our focus has to be on what is it that makes us one, as opposed to what is it that has caused us to have a split focus and be distracted from the unicity that exists in the real world. And these things that have taken place, and the question, and the question that Deborah was asked, all these things brings us right back to being singularly focused. You cannot have a split vision. These are the things that people are in search of, and you have a segment that's John. So how do we combat that without having to combat that?
How do you combat what without having to? You said, how do you combat that without having to combat that? What are you talking about?
How do we combat that from a spiritual perspective without having it a social, economic, political perspective.
And what is it we're combating?
He's distracted.
The split focus.
Oh, I see.
Well, I think that relates.
Because we have different segments focused on different things. You see what I'm talking about? Like when Deborah was asked that question, that person was looking at abortion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. The next question that comes to Deborah is the one of economics. And then the next one is one of politics. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well,
so
so,
if Deborah focuses on each one of those, then where's the spiritual focus? It's shifted.
well, it's covered over. I mean, so that light is what? Foggy. You can't feel it, see it. There's no warmth from it. So I'm sitting here thinking, if you try to follow think of this as a universe expanding, and all these issues and blah 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 blah, more and more distraction, blah blah blah. You try to go back to the singularity, the beginning of it all. Am I not? I mean, I'm hearing in this, you're back to the fundamental thing was spirit versus church, spirit versus religion. And it's that dichotomy, that change. And if I understand what even the Native Americans were saying in that article I sent you, Pastor Richard, from way back in Ben Franklin's days when they were trying to put the Articles of Confederation of the country together, the Native Americans were saying, don't go church and separation of state and church. You've got to have a spiritual core, or this won't work.
Right.
So, and you've said it here enough, and if I'm not misquoting or misusing what you're saying, it's not the politics of the situation. It's all back to spirit unites, church
Divides.
separates, divides by its very nature because it's, and perpetuates the us versus them. And all the rest comes from that.
Yeah.
The universe comes from that.
Seek ye first the kingdom and all these other distractions.
So to answer the question about people with kids, who? Why can't it be an individual thing? I certainly know people, I was trying to say, in other cultures where you're not going to tell me that mother doesn't love that
Oh, yeah.
child every bit as
yeah.
much and doesn't care for it, etc. But there are other factors that make it difficult to be conventional in the eyes that we would look at it as. Right? But the first chance they get married, but it could be way downstream because they don't have the money for the dowry and all that other stuff that comes with it. So I don't know how you pull the conversation back to kind of that church versus spirit thing. But maybe...
Well, I don't think it's church versus spirit as much as I think it is seek ye first the kingdom. In other words, seek to establish the kingdom of righteousness in this earth consciousness, as opposed to pursuing all these other things that you think bring you stability.
Well, I guess I'm not using the right words, but I'm just seeing that if that's where the separation comes, then how do you...
And I'm not disagreeing with you, Richard, that separation is the crux of it all, because how can you separate from the thing that's responsible for your existence? That when you talk about separate the spiritual from the essence of what we call government, the reason you do that is so you can justify anything else you do without having any spiritual accountability.
No, but I guess what I'm trying to say, if in Deborah's case, how do you walk the person back to that? That's all.
Sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't.
Well, I'm not saying they have to agree, but
You don't even have to say it sometimes.
Yeah.
You shouldn't.
No, I didn't say anything. I
Yeah.
just,
And you have
That's
to
a
know
good
on the
question.
inside, like when to confront it and when to
Yeah.
let it go.
yeah.
But it doesn't have to be a confrontation.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a confrontation. I mean, your Zen master doesn't have to hit you on the back of the head.
And he doesn't have to say anything either. Sometimes he sits
But-
quietly and leaves you with your own thoughts.
But that's purposeful, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're allowing something to incubate,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you put something there and then you walk away and
Yeah.
it incubates.
No, I let it incubate. So it's gonna come up again.
So, well, but for me, anyway, it's that simple generalization. It's just like, oh, you black people, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, I didn't grow up quite with that.
Mhm.
I had to learn to look in the mirror and go, oh, you white people. But anyway, that's another, I feel like Judas sometimes, I'll tell you. But anyway. But, yeah, so you have, and if it's nothing that comes out of you, then, you know.
But, I mean, the person genuinely wanted to know. They genuinely wanted, it was very sincere. And I accepted it as that.
Sure.
But, I
But that doesn't mean it's the right question.
right, exactly. That needs
Because I mean,
answering.
what I've learned in the work that I do is, most of the reason things don't quite work right is we weren't asking the right
Right
questions.
question,
You weren't
exactly.
looking at the right information.
Exactly.
The need, if you want. You weren't looking at the right need. So
Right.
the question really is, why would there be a sense of need or purpose in that decision to have a child? That's where I would start going. And why are we judging that that's better than somebody else's? Why don't we just first try to understand why that's important to somebody?
Right.
And then what are we doing to nurture that or redirect that in a positive way? I mean, you know?
Yeah.
Now I'm 2 minutes away from sounding like a socialist, communist, tree hugging, whatever, but you know? But that's where I would go to. And that doesn't mean for a second that the white girl in a different circumstance is making a better decision.
Mhm.
She's probably not making it wrong, first of
Right.
all.
Yeah, true.
She's making it for her parents, her community, whatever, because that's more the by definition, convention is the norm.
Mhm.
And that's like saying you're an average person. And anybody in statistics knows that's only for statistical purposes. There's no such thing as an average person. We don't exist.
Right.
But we think of ourselves too often, I think, as average. And hence, anyway.
That term is used to manipulate opinions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I love probability, because you don't know where I am on that bell curve. Leave me alone. Huh? Anyway.
To the next week.
So we go on.
Round two.
We go on. Well, I guess maybe the thing is to, how do you more broadly, deeply, and better understand what's happening around you? Is that a fair thing to ask? It's not trying to find a solution, but like I just said, until you know you're understanding it in more of its fullness, don't try to come out with a conclusion, because it's going to be wrong. It's going to be off the mark.
What you got? Who was
And even well-intentioned people
yeah, exactly.
can move too fast, you know? And I'm one who grew up believing in better make a decision than not. But you gotta know when not making a decision is making a decision. And you know, it's all that stuff that could drive you nuts if you wanna think about it. But you don't wanna feel like an observer either, right? Because this stuff means something to you. But if you think you have to either be out on the front line or you're not, you know, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, that was a troublesome statement that people just digested without thinking carefully. Anyway. I don't know.
Well, as much as they cry, Mao Zedong, this nation lives what he said. Everything was in. He said that power comes from the barrel of a gun. And that's exactly what we see in existence to this day, even though they cry when he said it, and inspired him. He told the truth. He wasn't saying it for America, of course. He also made the statement there's enough Chinese descendants in America to beat death with baseball bat in the need a gun.
He's right about that.
He's very right about that. Chinese don't necessarily need guns. There's enough of them they could take care of us with some baseball bats.
Keep coming.
Yeah, that's
You don't have to
true.
do anything except poison your toys when they make them for you.
Yeah, how about that?
They poison their own milk too. They're not exclusive.
Well,
The
but I mean, if you think about it, after a while, you know, it comes out of the barrel, you don't need a gun after a while. But what was literally a gun in the beginning becomes something else. But they can always take you back to that. Hence, white crime, everything else, a different kind of crime. It's a different kind of something. This one, the guy's got to go to jail. This one, we got to electrocute. But this one, nah, you know. You just, after a while, it's just, you just know it's not. You just know it's wrong. It's just not
I
consistent.
mean, look at how many mafiosi was arrested in Staten Island, and none of them were choked to death in the street. And for far more heinous crimes than selling cigarettes.
Well, I think it's interesting, this thing that's just been revealed about the Nazis and how the government made a deal with them, the Department of Justice made a deal to allow them to collect Social Security if they would leave the country.
What?
Yeah, that's what Congress just passed the law.
Yeah.
They've been collecting, they've been living in Germany or wherever they wanted to live, Argentina, collecting their checks.
Yeah.
But don't come back to the United States. Okay, I'll take the money and run. I wish they'd do that to me. Anyway.
You know, not, but you can't get it.
Nah.
National Socialist Workers' Party. Nazi.
No, I wound up being a communist, not a Nazi.
There are more Nazis in America than there were in Germany.
Anyway, yeah, that's what Congress, after all these years, we can immediately agree on.
Sure. They could do until all about dead.
Anyway.
The thing that bothers me about the abortion question and the children without wedlock is how easy it is to see those women as separate from ourselves.
See him as what?
That's the thing
separate?
behind that question. Yeah, why is it these girls can, you know, whether they're white or black, why is it that they make these decisions? There's no, it's just so easy to stand back and see that person as separate,
Is
and
it?
to even, yeah,
You
very
still
much
feel that
so.
way?
No, I'm saying that the conversation that was happening, it's not like, it's like these individuals are others, like they are separate, they're in this situation having to make this decision. How can they do that?
Well, you know, the person that originated the question had an abortion as a young teen and was very glad that that happened because she believed that her life allowed her to be different as it would have been had she had a child. So when she said that, she genuinely thought that was a better way than some of our 7th graders and 8th graders getting pregnant and having children. So.
How can you, with clear conscience, condemn someone for doing something that they chose to do? And even if they had the child, you were not going to help them take care of the child.
Well, it's the condemnation.
You're going to take away.
Yeah.
It's
the condemnation
that's...
that's...
Go ahead, Denise, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Say that again.
I said you're going to take away all the means that they have to take care of the child,
Yeah.
and yet you go condemn them from having an abortion, and you're not going to give them any assistance whatsoever.
Well, you said 10 years ago in here, abortion's not the issue. But I mean, I think murder's not the issue. Nobody's looking at how somebody got, that's my point. Just by introducing the question to the woman, how do you suppose she got to that decision? That starts a process that could change her whole understanding or not.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you're saying it genuinely, like almost like, well, I used to think that way, and then I realized I learned that apartheid was much more complicated than we want to think. And whether you think of it as there's good and bad mixed together, or however you think about it, what I think you're supposed to do as you mature, if you're going to mature, and that's the big contest. A big part of our culture doesn't want you to mature, wants you to escape into fantasy, but you start to realize that you got to take things apart to find the core, the center of it. It's not just there on the surface all the time.
And good and evil, good and bad, that's the distraction. That's the tree we have a problem with because we want to sort things
Well, we
and
think
say
it-
it's bad if you do this and it's good if you do
Yeah,
that.
pun intended, we think it's black, we
Yeah.
think it's black and white.
Yeah.
And then we have that other thing we say that it's mostly gray. You know, so you gotta figure out what that means. Well, it's a mixture. It's a mixture, I mean, you
Well,
know.
trying to decide one or the other is the distraction. That's what I'm saying. Like that has nothing to do with the oneness that Barbara was talking about. Like it makes it so easy to look at another person and try to decide if what they're doing is right or wrong, and instead of trying to understand and connect with that person. Like
Well,
we
that-
have no place deciding which one is right and which one is wrong.
I think an expression we've really lost the meaning of or even use of is there but for fortune go you and I.
Yeah.
Or I.
Yeah.
We don't try to put ourselves in their place.
Right.
To
Yeah.
find that. To at least give us some possibility of, well, maybe I, do the same thing where I run. And that's a big step toward community, I think, toward connection.
I mean, listen to what you just said, Richard. That in itself gives a sense of takes me right back rather to what Audrey said about the Christ image. But for fortune there goes I. We don't say that. But for the grace of God there goes I.
Right.
That's a difference. The spiritual versus the material. If that's the whole idea of that is the thing that we have to come to grips with. The spiritual versus the material. That concept in itself seems benign on the surface, but it speaks volume to I hesitate to say this, a cultural understanding or a cultural basis for existence itself.
You know what it also does, Pastor, is it sets up I know when I've thought that, I often have sometimes thought of, oh, I'm blessed where I am if I compare myself to where that person is, and that's not what that should be either. I know I've often had to catch myself and say, this isn't about, oh, I'm so much better off than that person. This is about how am I connected to that person,
Yes.
Fortune doesn't keep us from something as much as we believe the grace of our Elohim, the grace of God. So, and we say that we're guilty, I guess, of saying, no matter how bad off you are, there's someone worse than you. When in actuality, if it's something that you're dealing with, it's just as bad as what someone else is dealing with in your view. So you always, it seems as though we're always encouraged to find someone else in a worse predicament than we are in, and that should somehow make us feel better.
Well, but I think wrapped up in that too, if I use that expression, and obviously I do, consciously or not, there's still a sense of, I don't want to say guilt, but there's not a happiness or a, I'm cool because I'm not in those circumstances.
Us and them still, we're still seeing.
It's sort of like, my joy is diminished by the pain and agony I see around me. I mean, how can I be that happy? And I'm not talking about deep in the core of me.
Right.
Although I can lose touch with that. Like I said before, I kind of have an idea where the bottom of the pool is, and sometimes I just let myself sink down there. But that's because I know I'm going to bounce off that bottom and come back up. I don't have any circumstances in my life that have proved that that bottom's not there. On the contrary.
Yeah.
So, but
Yes.
you feel diminished a bit in your sense of however you're feeling about yourself, that other person is struggling. You didn't earn all that. You didn't earn everything.
And that goes again to the whole idea of what we're dealing with from one extreme to the other. When you look at the African versus the Caucasian, everything that's in between, Native American, Asian, etc., we get the extremes. And how I cannot count the number of times, as a matter of fact, if I had the dollars every time someone in my family or associate said this to me, then I would be found, okay, I guess. If you were white, you would be wealthy. If you were white, you would be powerful. If you were white, you would be whatever, whatever. Simply because they saw me as being strong intellectually, but I had to be white in order to be successful in one of those areas. That's what I've heard all my life. And that's disturbing. But at that time, it wasn't disturbing because I did not understand the veracity of what they were saying. That's the mentality we have to change.
Sheldon, did you put your hand up?
Huh?
Yeah, I did put my hand up because even when we are judging these other people, that we feel better, that we say, okay, well, at least we're here, well, at least we're there, we're still judging them upon, or looking at them, I guess you would say, through the eyes of what we think is important and what gives us worth as well. So you won't necessarily, and of course I'm definitely guilty of it at times, but how to explain? If I go outside and I feel extremely sad for a particular person, and I only am thinking about them like they're in this terrible position, I'm only thinking about them being in a terrible position because of that condition that I see them going through, not understanding the other parts of themselves, etc. So I'm not necessarily at that time necessarily concerned with their heart. I'm saying, okay, it's the same thing as someone who has $1 million and they're looking at some $1,000 and just like, you're a terrible person. Feel sad for you. Type deals as if I'm worthy because of this $1 million, and they're I don't want to say not worthy, but they're doing bad because they only have those thousands. So I think it really, all of these matters we're looking at as a mirror of what we actually identify as our heart being at those particular times. That's all I was saying, but that was a little while ago. And even when we talk about desire and intent, how we actually react to the things that are going around us materially, as far as the protests and things like that, it's not so much of, I don't think, what we actually do, because what we actually do is determined by our actions and our desires. So it's not one set thing. We're reacting to them, to different things, just like everyone else is reacting to different things, but not necessarily knowing what the underlying driving force is behind, or understanding the driving force behind their actions. So if it is that I'm looking at approaching these situations where I only want to understand this person, or I only want to reach this person with my heart. When you have a child, and you punish your child for whatever reason, there's a difference between punishing that child and trying to punish them just because you want to inflict harm on that child in some way, or if you really want that child to learn some valuable lesson for themselves, and it's not necessarily for you, but it's for themselves, and you purely care about that child, then those particular desires or intent is going to drive. We talk about set the direction of your intent. I think it definitely means, first necessary to have a desire and intent of understanding your heart and becoming more familiar, becoming more one with it, and then wherever that drives you as far as your actions are concerned, just so be it. That's where it actually takes you. But all of these things they're definitely not material. They're all extremely spiritual. And I think, I guess one last point, these type of things that are actually occurring help to illuminate where we stand at on certain matters for ourselves as well. Especially when you react to something a certain way and you didn't realize you would have acted a certain way to that particular thing. That is it. I feel like I did a lot of rambling, But yeah, that's it.
Do that all morning.
I can't promise that, Rich. Can't promise that.
Wandering around, trying to find the center. Put your finger on the center. That's not it. Okay. Okay, so we all get in a huddle, put our hands in the middle and go. Okay.
Yeah, you might need that huddle to prepare for next week. This onslaught continues.
What onslaught? Oh.
All these
Well, you know,
spots, hot spots. And
but
people
sometimes the best thing you can do is just turn off the TV.
Well, I don't have a TV.
Oh, well, turn off the radio.
You know, I get more food from 1 hour of Tom Joyner than television. And the pulse of the nation.
From who?
Tom Joyner. He's a radio host.
Uh-oh, okay.
I think it's also
Go ahead.
important to realize that it's things that are actually going on and taking place. It's not known, definitely not known and understood by the populace necessarily. They know subconsciously, but definitely not on a conscious level. Especially if you are someone who is not extremely, I would say, familiar with yourself. And when I say yourself, I mean the I. Someone who is not that familiar with those particular things won't understand them as well. So I would definitely say that. Why everyone get quiet when I talk? I feel like I just mentioned everything.
We're listening.
It's all you. We're just thinking about things, that's all.
Okay.
Actually, but that's a tangent. Talk radio. I've always been fascinated about that because it's a tangent. Okay. My handler said shut up. It's okay. She rang. Sort of. Just go bad, I feel something.
I didn't say it, except that.
Yeah. Well, actually, it is, I think.
Well, is that it?
That's all I got to say for tonight.
There'll be more next week, I'm sure.
I mean, my only thing is that be encouraged. Don't be discouraged. This is what we wanted. We wanted stuff to, the room to open so that we could see actually what we're dealing with. And we know this stuff has been under there. So why get discouraged when the pus comes out? We know what has to happen in order for a wound to heal from the inside out, truly heal. So, unfortunately for the people who are actually experiencing the actual physical loss, that doesn't change that. But we have to see that, and then we have to see beyond.
All right.
Pastor, you got anything else?
I'm done. I see you guys next week. I guess they're going to let me drive on Monday.
Okay.
So,
You're not going to start driving all over the world, are you? You're not going to drive all over the world, are you?
it just the way I feel, I mean,
Oh, dear.
I feel like I'm in bondage.
Well, go to the store and then go back home, but don't. I know how you are when you get in the car. I'm just saying. Take it easy.
I'm told not to drive, but I need some freedom.
Walk.
No.
Walk out to the end of Phoebe Place.
There you go.
Do I have a Harriet Tubman
come give you a ride.
Even that wouldn't be the same. Immediately when he said, if they let me go, and I realized that he's not down there because he's been ordered to not drive. I just started laughing because I know how he feels. I immediately started feeling the bad for him and his itch to just leave and go anywhere if he feels like it.
That's why you've been restless.
Because he can't go nowhere. Because he can't go nowhere. I couldn't go nowhere for a week. So I know that should be tied down.
Is there anyone who has any sympathy for me?
Yeah, I
We
do.
love you.
I had foot surgery and I couldn't drive for a week.
We would, but we know it wouldn't help you.
You drove anyway.
There you go.
On the sixth day.
We'd only encourage you to go deeper in your own self-pity. No, no.
I made 5.5 days.
It's literally, the encouragement is already there.
That's why I laugh, is because I can sympathize with you and I know exactly how you feel. So I'm feeling it, and then it is funny because you are feeling that, and I get to laugh at you jokingly. So I am sympathizing with you.
So Sheldon, what kind of hoodie are you going to wear this week? What color hoodie are you going to wear? With your transparent backpack.
So buy any Skittles.
Should be
I'm going, don't forget the 20th Foundation, 10 o'clock, all the facilitators. And I think that we made contact with everyone concerning that. Okay?
Saturday?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Saturday.
Sheldon.
Regular church that day.
George said he'd probably be down on the 19th. And you were planning on leaving the 19th also. You might want to contact him.
Okay.